Upon returning back to Germany, I was really at a loss. What do I do? I mean, I'm feeling really guilty because I came out of a family culture where my parents worked hard for everything they ever had, and they taught me that same ethic. So I'm not feeling very comfortable. My wife is making good money in the city of Kassel, performing in the state theater there, but I'm all alone. And I'm like, God, what am I supposed to do? And I remember very clearly the impression I got in prayer. I will open the door for you. It wasn't shortly after that, a friend of mine, Ernst, came to me and said, we've been wanting to start a Bible study, and we all feel that you should be the Bible teacher. I had told nobody of these friends what I sensed God telling me, and now they're asking me to teach in a Bible study. So I had never taught a Bible study. So I found some cassettes. I wrote out everything word for word. And so the first Bible study I ever did, I just read off a piece of paper what I had heard on a cassette from somebody else teaching that really helped me. And amazingly, it helped all those young people. And we started a little Bible study, and it grew and it grew and it grew. Within a few months, there might be 30, 40, 50 young people coming together to hear the Bible. And I'm the Bible teacher. Well, somebody heard about that and asked me if I wouldn't go to a youth meeting in a YMCA, which works very closely in this country with the Lutheran Church. So I'd go there and speak to young people. And whenever it was possible, Mayana would travel with me. If she couldn't go, my friend Ernst would travel with me because he spoke very good English. So he would translate me from English into German. And I began to traveling here and to travel there and to travel all over. And it got to the point where Mayana decided, I'm going to leave my engagement in Kassel and I'm coming back to Munich. She got a possibility to perform in Augsburg, and there was a small theater in Schwabing, which is kind of like the hip place in Munich where the nightlife is. And it was called Theater 44, Theater 44. And she got an engagement there to perform. And she ended up performing 150 or 160 performances with a very famous German actor named is Heiner Lautenbach. He does films and television. And back then, he was just a young actor. And they would perform every night doing an existential play by a man named Camus. It's called The Missverständnis, or The Misunderstanding. And so Mayana would go and do her performances, and I would teach my Bible studies, and whenever we had the chance, we'd travel together. We'd borrow my father-in-law's car, and we'd go off to a city of Nuremberg or a city of Schweinfurt or these little villages where we were being invited to go. And before I knew it, I was constantly traveling, and Mayana had to make a decision, and she decided, I'm going to stop performing, and I'll travel with my husband. And she was my mouthpiece. She was like Aaron was to Moses in the Bible. That was Mayana. She would translate my messages from English into German. And we'd sing songs together. And we started to learn modern Christian hymns. And we would teach that to the young people. And sometimes we'd be in places where the church was full on a Friday night with young people. I remember this one place where there was a disco. And on that Friday night, the disco was just down the street from the church. But on that Friday night, they closed the disco because nobody was there. The owner of the disco came over to the church to see what was going on. And there was 200 young people in a church on a Friday night listening to the gospel, singing songs about Jesus. And many of them received a living faith in their lives. It was such an exciting time. By the time 1982 came around, I had been traveling, and Mayana and I all over southern Germany, ministering to young people. There started to be something birthed in our hearts to have a place in Munich where we wouldn't have to travel, because we found that when we would go someplace and then visit it again 4 or 6 weeks later, it was like we had to start all over again. And it was sometimes very frustrating. So we thought if we could have a Bible teaching center. We didn't want to start a church. I didn't want to be a pastor. That was never in my plan. But I thought if we could have a center where we could teach the Bible regularly and people could come to the center, learn about faith, learn about living a life of faith, then we could fulfill the ministry God had called us to do. So in January, we started to make plans to start a church, to start this center. It was going to be called Word of Faith Christian Center. And I remember in the summer, we made one very important trip. We went to what they call a camp meeting. It was at Kenneth Hagin Ministries. And during that camp meeting, I think it went for 5 days. While we were sitting there, we knew it's now time. When we returned back to Germany in the fall of 1982, we were going to open Word of Faith Christian Center. And on that trip, I remember meeting a young man named Peter Hassler. He had just graduated Bible school. We were invited to go to Dallas, and I remember meeting another young couple, Stefan and Monica Steinle. He was originally Swiss, she was from Germany, and they were living in America, and he was the youth pastor, or the children's pastor, of a church of over 5,000 people. He had 500, 600, 700 children every weekend, but his heart was to come back to Germany and to minister in Germany. And then we also traveled on as we were going back on the East Coast to Arkansas, where we met another couple, Bill and Marilyn Gregory. And they had a heart to come to Europe. They wanted to minister in Germany. Their heart really was for Austria. So here you have a Swiss, you have an Austrian, and you have someone living in Germany. And God brought us together. We decided we were going to start Word of Faith Christian Center. So we found a house, and that was a miracle in itself. Even getting the money for the renting of the house. You had to put a security on the house. We had no money. God did a miracle. I remember we taught a seminar with just young people on a Friday and a Saturday. At the end of the seminar, one of the people said, I think we need to receive an offering for John and Mayana. They had no idea that we needed 5,000 D-Mark back then, Deutsche Mark. And they took it up an offering for us, young people. And they gave us over 5,000 D-Mark, exactly what we needed so we could put the security on this house. And in the first Sunday of October, we had almost 90 guests. I mean, I think the neighborhood thought something crazy had happened. We had all these people come, and we had the first church service. Now, what happened was we wanted to be a Bible teaching center, but within a few weeks, it was clear those that came regularly, they said, this is our church. And Mayan and I felt we were thrust into doing something we were totally unprepared for. We became the pastors for this young congregation. Now, we had 80 or 90 guests that first Sunday, but after that reality hit, we were really only about 12, 13, 14 young people. But there was such a sense of destiny in what was happening. And we started to meet other ministers, people coming from America that had a heart for Europe, and people like Mark and Janet Brzee. They would come regularly and they would help us. They were better trained. They were more experienced. And I started learning from other ministers how I could be a more effective minister, how I could be a pastor, how I could help people to know Jesus for themselves and how they can grow in God. And the church began.